If you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed, make sure and click the subscribe button, like, comment, let us know what you think about the episode. If there's a particular guest or topic that you'd like to hear from or about, we'd love to be able to take your suggestions and then get them onto future episodes. Today I'm going to be chatting with Kat from Siskiyou Diesel, and I had a great time chatting with her last year about common issues with the 6.7 liter Cummins, and I wanted to talk with her about the Fords, 6.7 liters, and she was telling me about some major issues with these trucks that arise from lack of maintenance, some other issues as well. So I wanted to go through those with her. It pertains to the engine. It also pertains to the fuel system, other parts of the trucks. You're definitely going to want to listen if you either own one of these trucks or you're thinking about buying one. So I look forward to chatting with her today. Before we get to it, I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors that helps make the Diesel podcast possible. Our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a 40% off MSRP code for you. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com, use code 25TDP40, get you 40% off MSRP. Great way to save some money, get some cool gear. If you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house, they got you covered with a bunch of different choices for opening mechanism, blade steel, blade shape, different handle designs. And the whole lineup that they offer is designed to meet any budget that you might have. So if you're in the market, want to save some money, get some cool gear, definitely head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code 25TDP40, get 40% off MSRP. All right, let's get to today's podcast with Kat from Siskiyou Diesel and talking about some major issues with the 6.7 liter Powerstroke. Kat, welcome back to the Diesel Podcast. How you been?
Good. How about yourself?
I've been doing pretty well, pretty well. I really enjoyed the last episode we did. I think it was last year about issues you were seeing at Siskiyou
Yeah.
Diesel with 6.7 Cummins and leaks and different things like that. And I've been getting more information on newer trucks like 6.7 Powerstrokes, L5Ps, some of the newer Cummins. And you have a lot of really great data points, a lot of hands-on experience with it. And so I thought it'd be cool to chat with you, like what you guys are seeing at the shop with 6.7 Powerstrokes, fixes. I'm sure there's things I've never heard about that fail a lot that you're going to be able to educate me on. So I look forward to chatting with you today.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there has been some new issues that have been coming to light, especially as these trucks are starting to get out of warranty and consumers are obviously, if you're out of warranty, you're not going to the dealer, you're, going to be going to a shop to hopefully get a better repair option. So
Yeah.
we are starting to see a little bit other failure points, but fortunately for us, we have very good manufacturers that are staying on top of it that have gotten us really good fixes. So that was really nice this year. We have a lot of new fixes that have come out that vendors and manufacturers were able to get out to the market to us that have fortunately made our job a lot easier.
I think to start, tell me a bit about yourself and the company. I know about you, I know about you guys, but for somebody who's just tuning in, maybe they didn't catch our last episode, tell me about yourself and Siskiyou Diesel.
No. So obviously I'm Kat. I am the shop manager here at Siskiyou Diesel Performance. We are located in Southern Oregon here. Um, Everybody always asks about the name Siskiyou Diesel. I know it's kind of awkward. So we were located in California in Siskiyou County. We did relocate our shop to Oregon for obvious reasons. Everybody should know that. So now we are Siskiyou Diesel at the base of the Siskiyous in Southern Oregon. I run the shop here with my business partner, Matt. Most of us, if you're familiar with the shop, you'd know us as Matt and Kat. So Matt does all of our transmission building. He does all the diagnosing. He oversees basically the guys in the shop, make sure they're all doing what they're supposed to do. I run the front of the house, and primarily I get to deal with all of the mission problems. Those are my babies. Uh, Yay.
Uh,
So I have about roughly, if I can learn how to count, which I can't very well, 18 years of experience with dealing with diesels. I typically focused on Duramaxes since that's always been the vehicle that I've had, but obviously been forced to segue into dealing with Dodges and Fords. So, um, That's what we do here in Oregon now. We primarily focused a lot on performance stuff. We are having to get more into the repair side of it, which honestly isn't a bad thing. Especially since some of the repairs that we can do, we do have a good performance option for it that has been cleared by the EPA and by CARB. So, with a lot of these vendors and manufacturers, they have been able to get on board with that and get some really good parts to the market with EO numbers. So it's been pretty exciting for the last year to be able to do that and use these parts that they've been able to bring to the market.
Yeah, a lot has changed recently with parts that have either CARB or EPA like testing
Yeah.
that it has hit the aftermarket. And I think with what you mentioned in the beginning, with these trucks running out of warranty, now the problems that they have, you no longer call the Ford dealer and drop it off and pick it up and you're on your way. You have to get it fixed yourself. And I had Fleece Performance on recently. They were talking about some fix-it parts that they have, and it really got me thinking about, well, what other issues are there with these trucks, and what are you seeing on the front lines as a professional in the automotive industry? So I wanted to basically turn the podcast over to you and ask, when it comes to a 6.7 Powerstroke, what are common issues that you guys are seeing on them?
So obviously the big elephant in the room is the CP4. The CP4 though, I mean, it does get a bad rap, but in all honesty, it's not that bad of a pump. The problems that we do see from them have been with user error, honestly. People not being educated on the CP4, specifically with the procedure wise, as far as changing the fuel filter or fuel filters. Too often do we get a truck in that they want us to take a look at it for it because it's experiencing low power check engine codes for low fuel rail pressure. We ask them, was the last time you changed your fuel filters, yada, 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 general maintenance. And, they'll go, oh, I change the front one every 10,000 miles and I drain my water separator. I'm like, okay, well, when did you replace it? He's like, well, I don't have to. Ford said I don't have to. So, obviously it's a big red flag. And that's part of the problem is that we'll have a ton of customers that do come in and that they never really changed the fuel filter that's under the bed. Or they do change it and they don't realize that you can't just change your fuel filters and start the truck. You have to prime that fuel system for, at least a good minute, 2 minutes. For us as a shop or any other shop, you have a scan tool, you can go in and turn on the lift pump. For customers, obviously I can't do that, which we tell people, cycle your key, listen for your lift pump, do it 10, 15 times. At that point, you should be good to start it. You've got most of the air out of the system and then start the truck. And then again, most people start the truck, they shut it off. You're not supposed to do that. Ford's procedural guide says you're supposed to let that truck run for at least 5 minutes, at least. People don't do that. They immediately start the truck, shut it off. And then from there, when you go to start it again, you'll notice it has a little bit more cranking time. And on some of the newer trucks that have the push button and they will crank themselves, they'll keep cranking until the truck starts. That's not good. Obviously, it's got air in the system, and you have that non-guided lifter that's in the CP4, and it's obviously doesn't have any lubrication. It has air bubbles, and that's one of the number one killers for the CP4. And then obviously running poor diesel. Obviously with the economy, with the way it's been, everybody's trying to save a buck. You're always looking for where you've got the cheapest diesel, the best price diesel, and that in itself is a problem. All diesel in North America, which shockingly a lot of people don't realize this, has bio in it. It started a while ago with the Green New Deal and the initiative and all that stuff. All of it has a minimum of 5% bio. And the cheaper the diesel, the higher the biodiesel content you're going to get. And with that, you are going to get a higher water content. We sent in some diesel samples to Blackstone Laboratories just for giggles, just to kind of get an idea of the flashpoint of it, just really the amount of water that's in that diesel. And in sending in a B5 diesel, 6% of it was water,
Wow.
which was shocking. And the flash point was pretty high. It was almost like 130 to 140 degrees. So at that point, I mean, that truck's going to struggle pretty hard because it doesn't have really the lubrication that it should have. And that's where we see that a lot of the CP4s will fail. They're not, fuel filters aren't serviced right. People are running a bad diesel, dirty diesel, contaminated diesel. Procedural wise, they're not changing the fuel filters the right way. Or they're running out of fuel. I mean, you do that once and you've cut the life of that pump down pretty good. So things that people could do to help cut down on the likelihood of their CP4 failing. Change your fuel filters when you're supposed to. Switch your fuel filters personally. Like you had Fleece on with the boys there. Love them. Everybody's got their own preference of who they like to use for aftermarket filters. Brand loyalty, at least here for our shop, is pretty strong. We push Fleece pretty hard with their aftermarket kits for the engine bay fuel filter and the under the base kit. I'm sorry, under the bed kit that they have. We push those pretty hard. I like the company. We've worked with them since 07. Love the brothers, love the tech support, love their sales team. They've always been there for us, and supported us and helped us with their products, as well as with R&D for some of their CP3 conversion kits on the Duramaxes. But we will upgrade the fuel filters, get something in there that is going to be better. Use a fuel additive that has a cetane booster, something, a water demulsifier, a lubricant in it. Be careful where you buy your diesel at. Put a little bit more thought process into that. That's really not, what you could do to try to help save the CP4. As far as preventing further failures, if it's going to go, one of the better kits that we do like to do is these guys. We sell these like crazy.
That's the disaster prevention kit.
So obviously the nice thing about that kit, and a lot of people again don't realize, is that between your injection pump and your injectors, there's no filtration on any truck. That gives you one. So it's not going to stop your CP4 from going out. It's not going to do that. It's not magic. But it is going to catch the metal there and help prevent further damage. Because when these CP4s do go, that's anywhere between a $9,000 to $12,000 bill, depending on the route that you go with your repair. Whether you decide to put in another CP4 in stock injectors, or you want to go with a DCR kit, upgraded injectors, it's going to vary depending on what you would like to do. But that is always a good idea to do, in addition to upgrading your fuel filters with like the Fleece ones. It's extra protection. And it's a nice safety net. It's a peace of mind, and it does do its job. We have seen where those CP4s have gone out with that kit on it, and it did not damage anything else. The rest of the fuel system was able to be salvaged. Nothing else got destroyed. So they actually do their job. So the kit we have seen, it does work. But for the CP4s, that's kind of the big elephant for those guys. That's really their bigger Achilles heel. The next thing that we've seen, and it's starting to become a little bit more common. A couple shops, I think Lenny mentioned it on one of these with the bottom end failure.
Yeah.
With some of these trucks. So with the emission intact, 6.7 Fords. So on the Duramaxes, whether it's an LML, an L5P, or an LNW Baby Max, they have a 9th injector that's in the exhaust, where it will inject diesel to help it burn at a hot enough temperature. On the Fords, what they do after the main combustion, they will inject diesel again to help it burn at a hotter temperature. So that's pre-turbo. This is happening in the firing order of the motor. So when it does that, you are running the risk that you are going to get oil dilution, especially if the truck is going through frequent regens.
Okay.
If you have a truck that's having an issue and is going through regen a lot, it's going to be consistently injecting diesel, and you could be diluting your oil. And if you're not somebody who changes your own oil, this may not be something that you're catching. If you go to quick stops, Jiffy Lubes, places like that, they're just going to drop your oil. They pull your truck and they drop your oil. Wait, they're done. They put they put your plug back in, they change your filter, they put in your, what is it, 3.1, 3.2 quarts of oil for a Ford, and off you go. They're not paying attention if they get more oil out than what they were supposed to, the texture of it, the smell of it. Our techs specifically, if we do oil changes on them, they're told to look for that on these trucks. Like if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't smell right, that's telling us that we're starting to have an issue with the emission system. Pre-turbo, it's going to be in the engine area, not with the DPF, not with the catalytic converter. But that will cause the bottom end to lose lubrication. Or the crankcase filter. Fords like the Cummins have a crankcase filter. And shockingly, a lot of people don't realize they have one on their Ford. It is kind of hard to see. It's tucked back there on the driver's side. But everything's got to cycle through that for your crankcase. And it dumps right back into the intake rate, right into your turbo. Where a lot of people complain that some of the Fords, they knock out turbos. Well, if y'all would change your crankcase filter when you were supposed to, and they're supposed to be done once every 70,000 miles. And we'll get into some of these trucks and they'll have 150, 160, and they still have the same darn filter on there.
Wow.
It's never been changed. But when that thing gets clogged and there's so much pressure, the engine will start consuming oil. So now you're losing oil. So not only are we starting to lose engine oil, but potentially you have diesel being added to it that's getting diluted. So that's where we're losing our bearings, and we're losing our main bearings, and we're throwing rods.
Is that common, or how often do you guys see that?
We're starting to see it a little bit more. I have one in the shop right now, currently, that threw a rod. And we are suspecting that that's what happened. We're not terribly positive. We're sending out an oil sample out of the oil filter, because obviously there's no oil left in the truck. There's a hole in the block. I can't really go off of that right now. But just from what we saw in there, there is bearing material. So we do know that it was losing a bearing. And that engine was actually fairly new. The customer had it replaced only 50,000 miles ago. So it's not like it was a high mileage engine.
Yeah.
And he had all of his oil changes done when they were supposed to. So there's no reason for why this motor should have done that. There's no reason. And it was a complete running assembly that was put in. So it had a new fuel system. It had a new turbo. There's no reason for why it should have done that. But we are starting to see more of those now. And typically it's in around the 200,000 mile range. So we're trying to tell people, as you start getting up there, if you go online to blackstonelaboratories.com, it's a oil diesel testing facility. You can order a oil testing kit for free. They send it to you for free. You put your oil in it, you send it back to them, and they will do the test, and that's all you initially pay for. It's just the test, and it's like 30 or 40 bucks. And they will give you a breakdown of the minerals that they do find in the oil or any other contaminants. Like if they find diesel, they'll tell you how much, the percentage of it, coolant, all of that stuff. So you can kind of see if you do have something going on. But that is one of the newer things that we are starting to see with the 6.7 Fords is the bottom end failure, and it's stemming from oil dilution from the injectors during regen and oil consumption because of the crankcase filter not being serviced when it was supposed to. That's one of those problems. And then with that crankcase filter not being serviced, it's also knocking out seals. The vacuum pump on the front of the motor, I mean, that's super, super common. I mean, but that's a factory screw up. I mean, those bolts are they're finger tight. It's the cover's practically falling off. But like valve covers leaking, rear mains, front mains getting knocked out. But that's just because of the excessive pressure that's in the crankcase from that filter getting clogged. Yeah.
It's really interesting. There's so many different directions and well, really questions that I have for you because well, one of them that stands out to me is I've talked with companies that make fuel additives, and it's a number of different companies, and I'll always see that comment from somebody that says, "Oh, I don't need to use it. I've been using regular stuff since 1995, and my truck always runs and it's always great." But I love the point you mentioned about the change with biodiesel in fuel from where it used to be and how it affects that because I don't think we as like a truck owner or maybe somebody who's driving a truck for work or whatever it might be, we don't think of that and we don't understand how on these newer modern diesels what it does and how it can affect the fuel system.
Well, especially when we do get that a lot. Like we'll get God, I can't remember his name. Uh, we've always been servicing his trucks. We've been servicing his trucks for the last 10 years here, and he gets a new Ford every 3 years. And it's kind of the same thing. He's always owned Ford. He's never not had one. And he's always been running hot shots, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But he's always done the same type of additives. You know, he's always treated the truck the same type of way. And, you know, we're trying to explain to him, you can't do that anymore. Um, Especially with some of his older trucks. Like he still has like an IDI 7.3. He still has a 7.3 Powerstroke. And we're, you know, trying to explain to them that the diesel that they're running in that truck now is not the same diesel that that engine was engineered to run. It's not the same. And it is causing an issue with that because we do have these consumers coming in and they're saying, you know, these, you know, it doesn't run the way it used to. I mean, and then take into account, obviously, the truck's older, it's got miles on it, but even after putting, you know, new injectors in there or in a new turbo, you know, they'll still come back and say, you know, still just doesn't feel like, you know, what it was. And it's like, it's not going to, and I'm sorry. There ain't nothing I can do about that. Ain't nothing nobody can do about that. The only thing we can do is try to offset it with additives like you mentioned. And there's a ton of them on the market. And the only thing you can do is A, look at your truck and how it runs, how it fires. B, look at your area, the diesel that is being used in the fuel stations where you live. Look at your elevation for kind of if your truck runs a little lean or not. And then you go from there on picking the appropriate additive. One of the companies that we do like is OptiLube, primarily because they don't have one additive. They have like 10. They have cetane boosters, they have a lubricant, they have a water demulsifier, they have a summertime blend, they have a year-round blend, they have an anti-gel, they have an agricultural diesel additive. They have one that's got a cetane booster. We use this one quite frequently on trucks that we are forcing through regen, primarily because it does have a cetane booster, which will help that diesel burn a little bit hotter. It has a lubricant in it and it has a water demulsifier. So that stuff does work and it does treat, it's a quart, it's $20. It treats 640 gallons. So on the wider spectrum of things, it's not that much more money that you're adding with Phillips to potentially help with the truck running a little bit better and helping the injectors fire a little bit better, hopefully run cleaner, clean up the combustion chamber, stuff like that, just because that's another really, really big issue that we see with the diesel today is we struggle hard trying to help these trucks burn clean engine wise. You know, damn the exhaust, burning clean that way. We're engine wise, using everything efficiently, using all of it, using everything that you can within reason. Um, and trying to help the EGR try to stay as clean as possible, because then that's the next issue that we do have. And thank you, Brad from FASS. That man is my hero. I love him so much. They came out with the EGR filter
Yeah.
kit. That thing's amazing. It really is. Um, Good price point too. It's not bad. I mean, people gripe about it. It's right around, I think, $14.99. Takes a few hours to install, but in the wider spectrum of things, it's a drop in the hat at the cost of replacing that EGR cooler, the EGR valve, and the servicing that you're supposed to do on your intake manifolds, your intake spider, and on the EGR cooler and EGR valve on your Ford to help it run clean. That filter is amazing. I'm really happy that he came out with that, and really pumped that he's going to be coming out with more for the other trucks to, it's going to make it a lot better.
It's really, I think that that's one of the emissions parts that I find is it's still a lightning rod for people. I think over time, and it's taken probably 10 years or so, but like
To come
I
out.
finally understand that you can have a truck with emissions on and you can make more power, and they make really good power numbers, and you can do things through hard parts like you mentioned or
Yeah.
additives to be able to make that filter not clog. But in the back of my mind, I still think of this EGR tube going back into my engine, dumping all this stuff into it, and just making the engine less efficient and dirty and doing what it does to the oil. And so when they came out with that kit, it was like, well, it's the first one out there. And it's from a reputable company that's been around diesel
Yeah.
forever. And it's so exciting. And every time I talk to them, the first comment's always, when's it going to be available for the 6.7 Cummins? When's it coming out for the 6.7 Cummins? So people are really, I think, excited, and they want that. They want to be able to address, like you mentioned, the efficiency and the cleanliness internally of that engine itself.
Exactly. I mean, it cleans up 85% of the filtration. So it takes out 85% of the particulate and carbon that your engine is actually making that would be going through your EGR and your valve and your DPF and your CAT. It is essentially taking 85% of it, and it is taking it, and it is self-cleaning. It does it all by itself, and that is not going back into your motor now, which is phenomenal, because we are really, really hoping that it's going to help cut down on the carbon buildup that we do see around the piston rings on a lot of these diesels today, because of the EGRs and how the trucks run, especially with the diesel not burning efficiently with the dirtier diesel that people do um, tend to run. But and then with doing that, that's part of some of the pre-engine failures that we do see, and in some of the DPF and CAT failures, especially when they have, so you have soot accumulation, DTCs, and then we have ash. And when we see ash, that's bad. I don't like to see ash. That usually means I have something going on in your motor. And then typically, if I'm gonna have ash accumulation, I'm gonna stick a borescope. I'm gonna uncork your exhaust. I'm gonna stick a borescope in your cat, and I'm gonna see that in your DPF.
Wow.
So that is when they start breaking down prematurely, and that is turning into ash. And why that happens is excessive diesel or oil is making its way down your exhaust. And that's normally going to come from either excessive carbon buildup around your piston rings and oil getting around it, the crankcase filter being clogged, or your additional diesel injection during the regen. But usually most of that's going to stem from there's a problem in the motor, the efficiency of the engine. So we had a training here. So the first training that we did have was at so Lenny DDP has been doing, he has his second training seminar coming up in April, where he puts it on at his shop, and he does a training with people there where he teaches them about the injectors. And then he has Tony Salas come up. That's Salas. So Tony comes and does a class specifically on emissions and engines. And he did cover Duramaxes and Fords, and we paid him to come in here to our shop and teach our guys. And something that he showed us is this stuff. So this is a oil additive and a cleaner. It's a one-time treatment that we have used. So when we've had a Ford that's experienced this, so we had a customer that was having issues with this. He kept on knocking out his DPF and his cat, and he would go to Ford and they would replace it. 10,000 miles later, it did it again. They covered it under warranty. And they said if it did it again, they weren't going to cover it. Well, 10,000 miles later, it did it again. So customer came over to us, they said, well, can I salvage it? No, I can't salvage it. I'm not putting another system back in. It's going to do it again. There's something wrong. And then something that everybody else missed was blow-by in the engine. And that was coming from the piston rings that had too much carbon built up around it. And his crankcase filter, the truck had like 180,000 miles, and the crankcase filter had never been changed. And nobody thought to check any of this stuff. So change the crankcase filter, change the oil. You put that in, a full bottle of that in with your oil, and you're supposed to run the truck at a elevated idle, so you can take it up on your scan tool. Just take it idle at 1,200, 1,500 RPMs and let it sit there for about 15 minutes like that. Drop your oil, that doesn't stay in there. Do another oil change, and then just run the truck, and you will notice a difference in about 200 miles. And then, put this system in, and truck's been going fine for about 50 to 60,000 miles now.
Oh, that's good. But what was the product name of that
So
oil
this
additive?
stuff is ATS chemical,
Okay.
and it's 505 CRO. And this stuff, you can get it online, get it on Amazon. But that stuff is a miracle in a bottle. Tony introduced us to that stuff. That's what he uses religiously at his shop that he has in Vegas. But that stuff will help and potentially salvage a motor if it has blow-by due to excessive carbon or round rings. But if you have a truck that's knocking out DPF and cats like this, your issue's in your motor. And potentially it's because it's not burning efficiently, because either there's blow-by, you have injector issues, potentially from a CP4, or they're just old and they're tired, or you're running some really bad diesel.
Being a professional in this industry, managing the shop for as long as you have, and seeing so many different trends or newer trucks, like you guys saw LBZs when they were brand new. You saw the 5.9 common rails when they were new. You've seen, the newest types of diesel. What would you attribute these issues, say, with the 6.7 Powerstroke, setting aside maybe quality issues at the OEM level, is just to a lack of maintenance? And it could be through, like that one guy you mentioned who has a bunch of different Fords and always has one, and I'm sure he has an IDI. He might have a 7.3 Super Duty or something, and the maintenance on those was so minimal compared to what we face now. Is it just lack of education, lack of knowledge, or maybe
Yeah.
accountability that they take to say there's all these new systems on the trucks, I need to maintain it better?
100%. I am going to put this on a lack of knowledge on the sales reps of people selling these damn trucks. So I was at the Ford dealership earlier this week. I was just at the parts counter. I'm waiting to pick up some parts. And there was a sales rep there talking to a customer about the truck, and he was finishing the sales of it. And the customer's like, "Oh, well, what's the general maintenance?" Because he was trying to sell him on the lifetime oil change and some other stuff. And he's like, "All you got to do is get in and drive. It's just a diesel." And I'm like, "We'll be seeing you later." Um, but no, 100%, it's not educating the customer before you sell them their truck. Or products, too often somebody sell a customer a product and just say, here you go, shoot, bye, go, you know. Um, it's yeah, it's 100% negligence. Um, but also, I mean, this could potentially fall on the customer too. I mean, how are you buying something that's like 80 or 90,000 and not reading on it?
Yeah.
I do that shit with something that's only a couple $100. I
Yeah.
bought a knife sharpener and I probably spent an hour reading on it, you know?
That's what I do. I
Um,
always look at the instructions and read it first, because I've learned if I don't do that, I'm going to mess up
yeah,
whatever it is I'm working on.
I can mess up anything. I can burn water. Like, so I mean, it's the sales rep, but also the customer too. You need to take some type of responsibility and ownership. You just bought a truck that's more expensive than probably your parents' first house.
Yeah.
You know, you should probably look into, taking care of your investment. Because essentially that's what a lot of these trucks are. They are an investment at some point in time, especially with how much they are. Um, it's offensive. And that's something else that, people jump into is, these trucks are so expensive. Why are they so expensive? Why was my, truck 10 years ago, $20,000 cheaper? People, oh, inflation. No, no. It's the amount of parts that are being added to the vehicle.
Yeah.
You know, a cat, a DPF, the modules. There are diesel particulate matter modules. We have NOx sensors, EGT sensors, particulate matter temperature modules, reductant. These there's like probably 2 grand just in sensors and modules on a DPF on a Ford. That's not the DPF itself. And that's not the cat. I mean, granted, it's the cat DPF is one shell unit on those trucks. They're not separate. Which essentially I think why they probably don't have as many issues with the DPF and cats as much as like a Cummins and a Duramax does, because a Cummins and a Duramax, they're separate units and they're inset pretty far back. So it's hard to keep the temperatures up to get them to burn through. I mean, that's one of the nicer things that Ford did do. I mean, it is a really expensive unit because it is one piece, but the heat that it is able to make, it does stay burning efficient in there compared to the other two.
I'm thinking of the $1 million question to ask you that pops up. It's going back to the fuel system, because I think that's probably because of the notoriety of it. People with CP4s, there's been so many issues that I think that just jumps out to the average person of an issue I might have with my truck. And it was really helpful for you to explain the crankcase vent filter and some of the other components that we need to think about that aren't front and center with maintenance and failures. But say somebody does have that S&S disaster prevention kit. They do have a CP4 failure. It catches all the metal in it. What is your preference to either? I'm sure money, it might be an issue potentially for the customer, but would you prefer to go back with another CP4 or do the DCR conversion?
CP4,
Would you?
because yeah, well, the DCR is so new.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not really, I mean, how long has it been out for? Honestly, it hasn't been out that long. I mean,
Yeah.
are we going to start seeing a bunch of failures on them? Maybe. We don't know. That's the hard part. Um, that's the really, really, really hard part is everybody always asks that, on what, like, well, what would you do? And I'm like, I'm really big on R&D in testing, and I mean, they've been pushed pretty hard, but there's not a lot of them out yet that have a couple 100,000 mile long. So right now, currently, um, I would probably put a CP4 back on. I have a couple customers that are hotshot drivers, and I have one, he's got 400,000 miles on his CP4. But he's conscious of where he buys diesel. He changes his filters when he's supposed to. He primes them properly. He adds fuel additive. If you do it right, they don't have a problem, typically. I mean, it could have a bad day and decide not to act right, but that's that's the hard part. But we always give a customer their preference. Like, what would you like to do? DCR has been great. They don't have the failure point that the CP4 has, but are they going to have one? Maybe. We don't know yet. They haven't been out long enough.
So what I appreciate about that answer and why, like when we did the 6-7 Cummins one last year and this one today, is you're a straight shooter, so you tell it like it is.
Hmm.
And I'm a consumer. The people who are listening to this are consumers, and it can be with any part on the truck or any brand of truck. We see something consistently, and we know it's a problem with, say, the CP4 or any number of issues on a truck, and we think, well, what should I do? And I think it goes back to really wanting to help people, which is
Right.
why I do a podcast. Is I want to help somebody avoid an issue, whatever might be on their truck. I'm sure you do too. I'm sure that's a cornerstone of what you
Yeah.
enjoy about your career is helping people. And this type of information is so helpful. As I think of the prices, you mentioned $9,000 to $12,000 on a fuel system. I don't even know what a DPF exhaust system, if you clog it and it can't be cleaned, what that
Hmm.
goes for. Or you mentioned a piston that threw, or a rod that went through the block. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars
Yeah, that
on an.
guy's bill is, and this is if his injectors test good. This is if they test good. Um, his bill is about 21,000 right now. That's a DPF cat unit for a Ford. That's about from Ford, granted, this, nothing just from Ford, that's about $3,800. We're talking about really expensive repairs. And don't get me wrong, this is my job to take your money, and I will. I will. But I much rather prefer that we do something proactively on top of not only preventing a bigger problem, but also giving you maybe a little bit more power, something to help it run better, maybe better fuel economy. I don't like dealing with repair options because they're not happy customers.
I was just gonna say that, like, if I got a
They're
bill
not
at
happy.
no, like 21,000, if you're gonna spend that on a truck, I know the customer's more happy when they say, "Well, I want lift kit, wheels, tires, compound turbo kits, head
Yes.
studs, built transmission. Here's my 21,000." It's probably more fun for you when you take the 21,000 for that. You hand the keys to the guy. He's happy, goes down the road, and it's a smile on his face.
Well, especially
Versus,
when I get to go shopping for him.
yeah,
Love it. Give me your card. Let's do this. But
versus
it's like
to
this
run.
bill, I'm like, I'm sorry, you got the same stuff back. There's nothing extra.
Yeah, just to make
In
it start and
fact,
run.
yeah, you're getting the same thing back. And I feel bad. I don't like doing that.
With on the 6-7 Powerstroke stuff. So we went through um, the CP4, the crankcase vent filter. I know the EGR filters are huge for maintenance, staying proactive. Additives. Um, are there any other things that you're starting to see with these trucks that are just coming out of warranty that are jumping out to you as a potential issue? Maybe the aftermarket doesn't have a solution for, or maybe it does, but just something else to keep an eye on. Could be related to the transmission, could be related to fittings, electronics, the modules, anything like that's popping up to you.
Um, with more people doing tuning, whether it's emissions compliant tuning, um, every single time you flash an ECM, you're cutting the life of the ECM. You are. It's like a computer and anything else when you do a software update. We are starting to see a lot more of the computers kind of getting bricked as people go and do their updates with EasyLink. um, or any other tuner that's on the market that's in there. And there's actually not a lot of outlets for people offering ECMs for boards. Like, I mean, there's some companies, there's a flagship one, goecm.com, um, Module Experts. There's a couple other companies that we deal with for like Duramax ones, Ford, IDMs, FICMs, PCMs, ECMs, TCMs, but there's not really a, a big market for ECM options for 674. And we are starting to see some of them come in with just some issues, either with shifting or just starting issues, like just glitches. And we're like, son of a bitch. And we ask the customer, then you go into the computer on like our Ford IDM machine or on ForeScan, and you're looking at, ECM flashes. And I'm like, this thing's been freaking flashed like 100 times. And then you go and talk to the customer, and it is usually some younger kid. Oh, I wanted this. I wanted a rumble idle, or I wanted a hiss, or, I wanted a lope to, and it's like, dude, you fried your ECM. We're starting to see that. Not really a lot of options there for them. Um, we do see a lot of up pipe and exhaust manifold failures coming out right now. BD makes an awesome kit, but that's really, I think, the only company that really makes a kit for it right now. I think PPE, I think, came out with one this year, but more exhaust manifold and up pipe options would be nice. Everybody makes an intake, a charge air tube for them. Um, our preference is going to be berries from S&B. Then same thing, brand loyalty. I love Barry. I love Jill. I love that company. Um, Everybody there, always really nice to work with. And Barry legitimately stands behind his products 100%. We've been selling S&B religiously across the board since it came out. If it's a product that you're looking for, and if S&B has a line for it, I'm gonna push it pretty hard. I'll get you whatever you want, but I'm gonna push that pretty hard. I've had one issue with a product, and it was a manufacturer's defect, and he did a massive recall after we found it. But there was a part that failed, and it cost a fairly decent repair on a turbo. We called Barry, he paid for it 100%. We had a tube that had a crack in it on a 6.7 Ford, apparently, and like 6 months down the road, it fractured and went down the intake and took out the turbo on a 2018 Ford. And no questions asked, we sent the tube to Barry. They took a look at it. He did a massive recall on a bunch of the other ones for the manufacturer date for that tube. And he literally bought the customer a turbo, new intake, all the piping, sent him a bunch of swag, and like literally from this point on, if that customer needs an intake, Barry sends him one for free for any truck that he's ever going to own.
Wow.
Like, there's not a lot of companies that I know that will do that for a part
Yeah.
that they only make probably $100 on. Like, that would be one thing if it was a part that you made, more profit on, but a part that you only make $100 on, and you cut a $5,000 check. I don't think a lot of other intake companies would do that.
No. No, that's rare in, I think, in any industry.
In any industry, on anything. A lot of people, when their part fails, they will cover their part, but they won't cover any damage that their part causes. He did. He stands behind his products. So when anybody ever asks for intakes, if we're pushing a product, it's going to be S&B, and everybody asks why. I'm like, this is why. He legitimately stands behind his stuff 100%. I don't know anybody else that does at all. And their stuff's great. It's beautiful.
Yeah, the
And
quality
that's
fits. I've had a
it's
few of them on my trucks in the past.
yeah, it's beautiful. The quality is great. And literally I've had one problem since they've come out. That's it. Literally count on one hand. And I only have a few fingers on this hand, but I can count on one hand the amount of times that I've ever had to deal with anything from that.
I've got another $1 million question for you, and I think this is going to be a little bit different in that when these trucks come out of warranty, it can be like you mentioned where somebody gets a new truck every 3 years. So a 2021 or 2022 is now on the market. Somebody's looking at it, and I get questions a lot from listeners that say, if you were looking at a truck that's 3 to 5 years old, is there one you would hone in on, one that's better than the others? And I know they all have issues, they all have problems, but as a professional in the automotive industry, what would you say about something from like 2020 to 2022, 2023 as far as 6, 7 power strokes? Is it a good buy? Is its maintenance costs about the same as the other brands? Does anything jump out to you as good or better or worse, or it's all just kind of a wash and they're all about the same?
We would go with the Ford hands down. Hands down. I don't really see them in here for repairs. Duramaxes in that age group. Injector harnesses. I mean, I sound like a broken record. Everybody injector harnesses on an L5P. The fuel rail, FCA on the passenger side on the front. That harness, it's gotten charred pretty good. They catch on fire from the isolators that are underneath the heat shields that sit right over the injectors. I don't know why they have them there, but they catch on fire. If you have any kind of diesel leak, I mean, you shouldn't, but if you have any kind of leaks there, it saturates that isolator and there's a lot of heat in the engine bay. They kind of sit right over the injectors, and then your exhaust manifold's right there. They catch on fire. Um, Their fuel tables constantly have to be reset. I can't tell you how many times we've had people call in, even from other shops, and they keep getting a check engine code for a injector, but the truck runs fine. But they cannot get the check engine code to go away. And you got to go into the scan tool and reset the fuel tables, and then you have to go drive the truck for about 20 miles in order for that system to completely reset itself. Um, so Duramaxes, L5Ps, they're very comfortable. I love them aesthetically. They're beautiful inside. They ride very nice across the board, but I'd rather get shot in the face. Um, we have a lot of problems with those. I pull my hair out over their knock sensor issues. Like if probably the L5Ps are the ones I have in the shop the most for emission problems. Dodges, same thing. My biggest gripe about the Dodges when they have emission issues, you cannot force a regen on a Dodge unless it has a P 4189 check engine code. Like most of the time with any of these trucks, a Duramax, a Ford, or a Dodge, if you're having any kind of regen issues or if they're getting clogged, you can typically go in and clear codes, force a regen, or go in and do an after treatment system test or do a reductive fluid quality test, something like that. And the truck will sit there, elevate its own idle, and it does a system test. It does its own check through the emission system. You can't do that on a Dodge unless it has a P 4189.
Wow.
You can't. So it drives me batshit crazy. The Dodge drives me crazy. Um, that one is the one that is and set farthest back, the CAT and DPF, for trying to keep the temperatures up and keep that truck hot. It is a struggle. It is a massive struggle. And their turbos. I mean, their turbos go out still consistently, whole set. I wish they would change their design of their VGT. with their ring here and their uh, fins here to engage. I wish they would change that. Um, I'm hoping Bass comes out with a filter for that soon. Please, Brad, please. Um, but that and then same thing with them. Their crankcase filters are probably the ones that cause the most damage because theirs is underneath the valve cover. Um, that and then they have a bunch of the oil leaks that are in the front. And that year is still seeing a lot. That and then that year, the 2020 and 2021, you have a chance that you're getting one that had a CP4 on it at one point in time. At this point in time, it should be off because they've had that recall, but you're still getting a truck that had one on it. So there's a very good chance that the injectors potentially have damage.
This
So,
is this is the type of information people want and they thirst for, and I can't answer it. I'm not on the front lines of what is coming into the shop every day. So it's so valuable to hear your experience with all three, and I definitely want to go into in depth with you in the future with the
yeah.
L5P and the 6.7 Cummins. But with the 6.7 Ford, what you see, what to expect, ways to potentially avoid having to visit your shop and do maintenance stuff, and rather go in there and say, I
Oh,
want
come
more
on, I'm not
power.
that bad.
They might want to go in and say, hey, I want more power. I want this turbo kit. I
Yeah.
want this. I want that, which is a much better, it's just exciting. So,
It's a much
it,
better conversation.
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely more fun.
we like them. So whenever we have customers come in, or whether it's a customer that's new to me or my existing customer that has a Ford that they just picked up that's new to them, or whether it's brand new in general, we like to get them set up on a good maintenance schedule. Um, and just tell them sometimes you can't necessarily depend on the truck to tell you when you should change your fuel filters or change your oil. You should kind of have your own schedule set. I mean, and if the truck tells you to do it sooner, do it. That means you picked up fuel somewhere that was bad, or you are having oil dilution and the truck sees it and you need to come in. Getting them put on potentially a better oil to run. Getting them into either running like a Schaefer's, Amsoil, something like that, something that's going to kind of help the bottom end last a little bit longer, especially if we are thinking that we could potentially see an oil dilution problem. Making sure that they are changing their crankcase filters. Um, and also for our technicians as a shop, they are told, I mean, we have a checklist for common stuff that these trucks have, and we always tell them to check for it. Like if a truck comes in and it has over 70,000 miles, we tell them, look at that crankcase filter. If that son of a bitch has not been changed, you need to say something. You need to come tell me so I can let them know, hey, this has not been changed. Um, so getting them set up on that properly, potentially, getting them talked into, better filtration for fuel filters. I go as far in with our customers around here, like, where do you live? Okay, I want you to use this fuel station, please. I don't like this fuel station. You know, they don't clean their tanks, they use a biodiesel, a higher blend. I don't want you to use them. Where they work, like for where we're set, our shop is at 1,400 feet. You drive 2.5 hours west, you're at the coast, so you're at 0 feet. You go 45 minutes east, you're at 4,300 feet. Um, some of the steepest grades in North America, the three of the top five steepest grades are within 45 minutes of my shop in North America. So getting them set on that and understanding where they drive their truck and how they drive it. Like putting the truck in manual shifting mode when they tow. Because these trucks are still 373 gears and they're 6 speeds, unless it's a newer truck, then it's a 10 speed. But these 6 speeds, when you're towing, even if you have your tow haul on, they're still trying to jump through those gears. Like it's still pulling a grade, a steep freaking grade, mind you. And it's still trying to, jump into 6th gear. And it's like, your EGTs are probably through the roof.
Yeah.
The 10 speeds are nice because because it kept the gearing for the truck the same. It's still a 373 gear setup, and you're always in the power band. So it's kind of nice. Um, but we are starting to see some failures on the 10 speeds. So unfortunately, for our Ford guys, I think that y'all are going to be getting into those trannies a little bit sooner because they are having to shift so much, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's nice that they do because you're always in the power band, but unfortunately you are shifting a lot. So pretty sure we're going to be getting into those quite a bit. We're projecting. My business partner here, Matt, picked up a 2021 Ford about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And he uses it a lot. He also owns a UTV company, and he sponsors UTV Takeover and goes to the Sand Sports Expo show. Because he goes for hostels, booths for all of his UTVs, but he tows all over the frickin' place. He goes to Sand Hollow, Glamis. If it's got sand and it's on the West Coast, he goes and he takes that truck. But it's, we can tell just over the last couple of years with the shift points that we're like, okay, these 10 speeds may not be what they cracked up to be. So they may be a potential problem. Maybe. We're gonna,
We'll definitely have to keep an eye out for it and
yeah.
see what happens with those. I'm sure there's a question I didn't ask you, or maybe there's somebody local, or they want to drive to you. Maybe they're frustrated where they're at, and they're like, people can't figure out my truck around me. How can people contact you, Kat? Can contact the shop, follow you guys on social media, be able to reach out and ask questions?
So the best way to get through to us is that our phones are constantly blowing off the hook. I think that's our biggest complaint. People, it drives them crazy. They get irate. I would too. Because I only have one person in the front counter that answers phones, and then there's me. The best way to get a hold of us is through email, which it's siskiyoudiesel@gmail.com. Or you can get a hold of us on Instagram or Facebook. I'm not really on the Facebook one because I don't like social media. I hate it as much as possible. I try not to do it. Unfortunately, though, that's how our businesses are ran today, so I kind of have to. But I do have one of my employees that does run those pages, and he does get those messages to me, and then I will respond to him. Or if you are in the area, stop by. I don't care. We tell people walk-in customers are more than welcome. And in some cases, that's honestly the only way you're probably going to get through and talk to us if you're trying to actually talk to somebody over the phone. Stop by. Obviously, it's the weekend, but I actually do work on the weekends. We do appointment only on the weekends for any kind of sales stuff, pickups, or drop-offs. My technicians do not work on customer vehicles on the weekend. Like right now, you probably heard them pulling in. My guys are out doing something in the shop. I don't know what, but they're doing something. But we do have you guys come in on the weekends if you wanted to come in and chit chat or go through some parts. Typically, I keep a ton of stuff in stock. At any given time, I've got something in the shop that we can show you. We got a couple 6.7 Fords in here. We got a first gen with compounds. I got a 86 square body Chevy that's got an O2 Duramax in it with a big turbo. We got Matt's drag truck. We got my drag trucks. Yeah, it's at any given time, we've got one of every generation of truck in here that we can kind of go through and show you. We have a couple cabs off of trucks right now that, we can go through it with you.
It's always cool chatting with you. Like I said, I appreciate how you're a straight shooter and all the information that you have that doesn't get out there to the average truck person or even me. That's all I do is talk about diesel trucks all day. I don't know a lot of this stuff, so it helps to go to the source, ask the questions, understand challenges, issues, hard part failures, things that are going on with trucks to be able to, I think, ultimately avoid it, or if it has happened, what options do I have to fix it? So it was fantastic to chat with you today, Kat. I really appreciate the time and the expertise, and look forward to jumping into that L5P 6.7 Cummins conversations here shortly.
Perfect. Look forward to it.
Don't forget, diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 25TDP40. It'll get you 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money, get some cool gear. If you're in the market for a new EDC knife or something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house, we've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, handle design, different opening mechanisms, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget that you might have. So we appreciate them offering that discount code just for you guys. So if you want to save some money, get some cool gear, use code 25TDP40. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters, Tyler Loewen at 23 Diesel, CUTTERUP Rob, Robert, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube and podcast apps, follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 9 of the Diesel Podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you want to hear in 2025. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.